Hello, you lot. Welcome to the group chat by Footy Accumulator, sponsored by Betfair with me, Will Perry, and Mr. Alan Bruce McAnally, who thinks that Scotland are the greatest team in the history of football. And he might be right. 8 games unbeaten. I think that goes back. Well, I know it goes back, doesn't it, to your days, 32 years ago, the longest run since then?
Yeah, it was a while ago, probably just prior to, what was it, World Cup 1990 or something, or maybe a wee bit later on. But yeah, listen, we're on a fab run. Slovakia 1-0, wasn't the greatest game in the world. Then we go and beat Czech Republic, again 1-0. Little Ryan Fraser pops up for a goal. And hey, listen, we've still got to beat Serbia to get to a major competition, which we haven't done since France 98. But things are going well for us at the moment, Will, you know. Stevie Clarke's got away with play. He's even played McTominay in a back three, which means I've got somebody at least that can try and get the ball into areas that we want to get it, from the back to middle. Scotland's problem is always going to be scoring goals. But listen, as much as I know you're tongue-in-cheek with me a little bit there, I don't want to go too over the top, but we are genuinely a little more excited and almost more optimistic, Will, I think is the word to use. Yeah. The fact that we may be underdogs going to Serbia, we just might, in this kind of form, with lady luck on our side, manage to get there somehow.
Yeah, well, no, in all seriousness, I think you've got a good bunch of players. And that's the thing, is that if everyone's fit, you know, and obviously you throw in a Champions League winner and a Premier League winner in Robertson, and, you know, McTominay was playing centre-back, wasn't he? And, you know, there's a lot of experienced Premier League players in there and guys who are ripping up in the Scottish Premiership as well. And I think importantly, Al, you know, there is that camaraderie. You can feel it with Steve Clarke. There's something there which wasn't there under previous Scotland managers.
You've just hit it right on the head. How many times in the last 2 years have you thought, Scotland ain't winning this game? And all of a sudden now with Stevie Clarke, even the way he talks Stevie Clarke, but even the way the players seem to be acting during the game, we don't look as if we're an easy pushover. We're certainly more difficult to beat, which is a good thing to have naturally, albeit that if you only win games 1-0, you're not exactly going to be the Brazil team of 1970, but you're winning games, and that's what we need to do just now. And that's got our confidence up. So, and you're right about some of the players we've got now are more established Premier League players. And even some of the players in the Championship are probably the best players in their team, in the Championship team. It's so important. But right now, we're in a fabulous place. And November can't come quick enough for Scotland, to be honest, and we play Serbia.
Yeah, that is a big one, isn't it? What a game that is. Look, here's my bugbear of the week, right? Because I know you've got one, and it might be called Project Big Picture, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But look, mine is this. National anthems, right? I'm sick of watching England players. All right, it gets exaggerated a little bit when it's at an empty stadium and you can't hear any fans. They go down the line, the camera, and the England fans are there, just goes, what the hell is that, right? This is what needs to happen. They need to take a leaf out of the England Rugby Union boys book, okay? Even my old pal, James Haskell, my old schoolmate, right? He's retired. But when those boys used to line up at Twickenham, it's like, this isn't about the monarchy or whatever. You're playing for your country, playing for England, right? You're playing for Queen and country. And even if you're not interested in the monarchy, that's a whole different story. You're playing for your country. You should be there absolutely belting it out. You're living the dream of millions and millions of young lads and girls. And you're standing there at Wembley Stadium and you're muttering out that nonsense. That has to change. That's the beginning of a game. And I know you may be focused and that may be an argument and so on. You should be like the England Rugby Union team, screaming your hearts out at the beginning of that game. And every time I see it, and some people don't even know the bloody words.
No, well, the other thing is, I mean, I think God Save the Queen's a lot easier than the Flower of Scotland, to be honest.
But they belt that out. Did they not belt the Flower of Scotland out? I remember Colin Hendry used to scream it.
We do, because we only knew the first verse, and after that, that's why we stopped, because there's about 4 verses. Listen, I've obviously stood with Scotland and the national anthem, and I've sang. I've also had things in my mind about the game coming up. And I used to think about my grandfather, who you know, was in the Dragoon Guards, and I had, you know, like stupid things in my head. I used to think about my family and stuff. So there is things that go through your head, and, you know, the weight of a country and expecting to do well and making sure you do well. And then after the game, whether it's elation or, you know, this disappointment, you have to deal with it. But it is becoming, I agree with you, it does become tedious. And you're right, you take England rugby team as an example, and I'm going to throw the Scotland team as well. I don't know whether there's a different attitude to it or whether in the dressing room, and I've never been in a rugby dressing room in my life, whether somebody says, by the way, there's only one thing we have to do before the game, and whatever nervousness you have, you belt it out in the song. Otherwise, there's no point doing it. So maybe somebody needs to say to the lads, look, here's the first verse. Make sure you know it. Boom it out. Let's get on with the game.
Do you know what? And I'm surprised as well. And I know he's a pal of yours, but Gareth Southgate, right? He spent time with Eddie Jones. And I think it's only little tweaks and whatever. And all right, you can't force players to do it. They should want to do it. And again, I'm taking the politics and the that belief out of whatever you don't want to sing about. But you're singing a song that represents camaraderie as a team. Get your arms around each other like the rugby players and belt it out and get on with the game. Anyway, there's my penny's worth for the week.
That's my rant. Listen, I do agree with you. You're right. Not everybody's the same. I don't know whether think of this, but because there's no fans in the stadium, because the cameras got the microphone next to it, you're picking up the lads to see if they can sing even a note. Yeah. There's not many of them can do that.
But that doesn't matter. But the rugby boys make a thing of that as well. Even none of them can sing, but they're just belting it out because they're proud to be there. And it's not. And you're right. It's not just England's rugby team. It's Scotland. It's South Africa. It's Wales. It's a rugby thing. You know that I think that football should be adopting some of that. Anyway,
well, it's a good rant. It's a good rant, man. It's a good rant.
You can have your rant now, shall we? Well, no, I'll tell you what, before we move on and talk about that, before Easy Tiger, right. England, just to finish that England conversation, Harry Maguire's getting a lot of stick, okay? He had a trip to Greece, which he probably wish he went on in the summer. Yeah. He's come back, United have been schooled a few times, haven't they? Even against Brighton and Crystal Palace, and then, had his pants pulled down against Manchester United, against Tottenham, of course. And then the England games. Look, they're beating the best team in the world in Belgium, but then what happened with Denmark? He's been nicknamed Dirty Harry, which was a great film. But so where do you put Harry Maguire right now? Does he, for you, still start for England? Is he this £85 million player? Does he need to just reset and get back to where he was when he was great at Leicester? Yeah,
I mean, listen. He's going through a tough time. I think the personal thing has affected him a little bit. The first tackle last night is a strong tackle. He's trying to force his will on the game almost. The second one's a bad touch and then he's a little unlucky. I heard someone on the television the other night there saying, take him out of the firing line. That's the worst thing you can do. I ain't having that. £80 million defender wants to be taken out of the firing line. Don't talk utter nonsense. He's one of the players you want to rely on. He's one of the players that wants you to rely on him and doesn't want to let you down. Now, for a defender, it can be difficult at times. He's not the only one that didn't have a fabulous time with England, by the way.
Yeah.
But obviously getting sent off is bad. And then, obviously, Reece got sent off as well right at the very end for something he'll regret for, calling the referee, whatever he called him. But the Maguire situation has escalated into something that he's definitely been, that's unfair, Al. He's not been used as a scapegoat, but he's the one that everybody's pointing the finger at just now. He's with Manchester United. There's only a handful of people can actually tell you what it's like to play for Manchester United. It's not the same as playing for some other clubs. It's just not. And he's an England international, so a lot's expected of him. And if you listen to all the lads in the England squad speak about Harry Maguire, they rely on him. They can go to him. They expect him to be as good as everybody thinks he is. And he's just going through a time right now that he's just like, come on, Harry, seriously, what are you doing here? Get it organised. So I ain't having him sitting in the stand because you're like, oh, he's having a hard time. He wants to play. He wants to prove he's okay. And he'll get through it with Manchester United. And I don't think it'll be a problem. I'm a big fan of Harry Maguire. But I can understand people pointing the finger at him. But let's see how wide his shoulders are now to carry the big price tag and obviously the weight of a nation behind them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big 6 months for him, isn't it? Right,
absolutely.
Let's let the tiger out the cage. Let me pose it to you this way. When you heard what was being proposed by Project Big Picture, a.k.a. Rick Parry, chairman of the EFL, and Manchester United and Liverpool, when you actually saw what they were proposing, what were your initial thoughts on that?
You're selling your soul. Your first thing when I heard it, I went, well, they haven't thought about this in the last 2 weeks. That's the first thing I thought, Jane. I was like, well, you don't come up with a plan like this because of COVID. I think this has been going on for a year and a half, maybe. Because there's no way you can possibly come up with those decisions and think that everybody will be all right with it. I think this has been in the pipeline for ages. We've just never heard of it. And we've got to this point in the world that clubs are financially in massive trouble. Not that they weren't before, but they're in more trouble now. Because how often in the last 2 or 3 years before COVID did we think that teams were going out of business? Lots of teams struggling financially. So there's no way I think this has happened in the last 2 weeks. It's a non-starter, Will.
Is that dangerous, Al, for them to have too much power, the top six, the big six?
Yeah, I think it is. Of course it is. And we think in England and Scotland, and the United Kingdom, that our football is a working man's game. It's where we can go and release something this Saturday and enjoy watching good football and have our heroes and our idols, as well as being able to boo at some players that we don't like because they play in the other team, but we wish they were in our team. You know, that's what we've had for years and years and years. And now it's gone completely the other way in terms of business, money, and I suppose that's just modern day football. But the more power you give to somebody, the more they're going to take. And I just don't think it's a good idea for 6 clubs in England to think they can make all the decisions for all the clubs. I just don't think that's right.
Yeah, look, just to balance it out, there may have been some good things in the argument and some things which look like they've come out of the meeting that, clubs voted unanimously against in terms of Project Big Six, but that is supporting the clubs down the pyramid, down the chain, whatever you want to call it. And that just, to me, seems the obvious thing anyway, that Premier League clubs, wherever that money comes from, whether it's player cuts or salary cuts or whatever, or just, TV package money being handed down to lower league clubs, that looks like it is going to come out of it. So there are good things in that sense. But then, I hear Neil Warnock talking on the radio saying the idea of getting rid of the EFL Cup, but we'll throw you, B teams from the Premier League. Lower league clubs don't want that. They're not interested in that. That goes against everything that cup competitions would be about. Neil Warnock says you can sling your B teams.
Yeah, and I understand where he's coming from there, because it's almost like a token gesture. We're going to. I tell you what, I've said this to you before. I used to like it when you had the reserves of a football. So you had the A team and a B team, certainly. It's a B team, it's a reserve team. But then some of the superstars that weren't playing the first team would have to play in the reserves. And if you were playing away from home, they would play at home. I used to quite like that model, because you didn't have players sitting in the stand because they weren't playing the first team and had to keep fit in the other team. Plus, it was a great way to bring through younger players, because I did it way back in the day. And then people will say, well, football's moved on from there. It's not like that anymore. And I appreciate that. But you can't have the situation where you've got managers like Neil Warnock coming out and giving, hang on a minute, don't throw me this scrap because we don't agree with everything. And that's just the way it is. I mean, the Charity Shield one, are you bothered about the Charity Shield anymore? Is that one where it's too much now?
I'm a bit of a traditionalist.
But it's the opening of the season. Yeah, it's the opening of the season, isn't it? The winners of the cup play the winner of the league. I mean, I remember back in the day, and I'm going to say 1984, 83, 84, 85. I can remember Celtic won the league and Liverpool won the league, and we played a British Cup. Yeah. For those two to play, very similar to the thing. I mean, we did it in, I'm going to say, October, November. I think we actually went to Dubai and played the game. Yeah. But you know what I mean? So I quite like that as well, even as a player. So I see I still like the curtain raiser of the Charity Shield, to be honest. And I don't know if I really want to get rid of that one.
No, I'm with you on that. And look, I mean, there's all these sorts of things behind the scenes, aren't there? And how do you commercialise that? But that, to me, immediately says you could market that, couldn't you? The Scottish champions, whether that's Celtic, whether that's Rangers, in a mini tournament and so on. And I know there's about 15 mini tournaments which happen in pre-season. But for me, the Community Shield is part of the pre-season. To suddenly scrap it and say, well, it's disruptive where it falls in the calendar and so on. It's just part of your pre-season. You're just back in this country. It means you can't be made off making 65 million quid because you're in Thailand or China. Get back to Wembley, play the game, start the season.
Well, let me ask you, you're a big Manchester City fan, and they're obviously part of the top six, this six, the strong six that want to make decisions. When you heard it then, what did you think genuinely? As a football fan, and forget about the love you have for Manchester City.
Yeah. No, I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong. And I think they were right to unanimously vote against it, and which City, by all accounts, did as well. And it was only United and Liverpool who, we still don't know officially whether they voted for or against. But the main thing is that it was unanimously voted against. it's dangerous, isn't it? Giving the six the power. And don't forget, there's a lot of City fans who, like me, will remember when we had absolutely zero power and know what it's like to be down, losing to York and Macclesfield and Lincoln and Stockport and Wycombe Wanderers doing the double over you.
There was one thing I heard, and I apologise if I get this completely wrong, but if you and I won the Euro lottery for 160 million and we wanted to buy somebody, apparently unless the top six says we could buy it, we can't buy it. That's the kind of power they had. So in other words, if we were coming in with a few quid to challenge that top six position, the top six could say, oh, they've got too much money, they can't buy this football club. And I was like, well, that's not right.
It's dangerous.
If somebody wants to buy a football club and they have the means to do so, and you're fit and proper by the English Premier League and the et cetera, then you should be able to do it if that's the case. Not that six clubs decide not to do it. And I hope I'm right there. And that's part of the thing I wasn't happy with. We have to flip this over a bit, Will, and go to the positives of, there's a chairman at, and I apologise again, Accrington, Rochdale, Crawley, Torquay, somebody who thinks, oh, a share of 250 million. Well, that means we're not going out of business.
Yeah.
But then again, to stay in business for a handout from somebody else is lovely. But who says the business model they've got is not going to put them in even more pressure? They're not using the money properly. It is such a problem, modern day football. But you're right. I'm glad that the majority have voted against it for sure.
I think it was, to do it at a desperate time like this when clubs are so desperate and clinging on by the skin of the teeth, and sort of like, look, well, we'll throw you this. And it's a time for them to really push home the power and monopolise what's already become a monopoly in the Premier League. Look, I just throwing an idea at the top of my head, and I said it to you a minute ago, the perfect idea for me is that you take a cut of your TV percentage, that you get big money in the Premier League for your broadcast rights, and that is just split down, and that would be more than 50 million quid to keep some clubs going. And I'm sure, whether it's illegal or not, but I'm sure that, if they were to say to Sheikh Mansour, okay, you can sort of make any donations that you want, we could sort a few things out, and clubs owners could do that as well. Look, let's move on and talk about fans back at stadiums, right? This is another controversial topic. So, Al, what did you make of it? Because I saw some pictures knocking around social media this week, and I was like, they've got to be doctored. They've got to be fake. Don't get me wrong. You may not believe it, but I love the theatre. I love a musical. I'll go and watch anything in the West End. Love it. Love it. Right? However, I saw pictures from the London Palladium. I couldn't tell you what was on, but apparently they were real, and they were from this week. And there were I was about to say fans. There was an audience, right? They had masks on. Some of them, whether that was their support bubble or not, they were all in little groups. There didn't look a lot of social distancing going on. No. How are you allowed, Al, 1,000 people into the likes of, the Royal Albert Hall, the Palladium, and you can't have, and I'm not even talking at the Premier League. I'm not even talking like Wembley Stadium. I'm talking pretty much like a National League stadium ground, you could call it, that hasn't even got a roof. How can you not even have 100 people stood around a National League stadium when you can have the London Palladium full with people playing the trombones?
It's a joke. It's an utter joke. I want to know who in the government says you can.
Well, Mr. Oliver Dowden says you can, or you can't.
There you go. I'm glad you said his name because I didn't want to stick him right in it. That is an utter joke. And by the way, about 3 weeks ago, somebody told me there was 1,500 people in the Royal Albert Hall. I'm talking ages ago. And I was like, no, there wasn't. They went, yeah, there was. And I was like, how can they? You can't have 400 people. I don't know whether I said this to you, Will, or did I say to Andy in the group chat a couple of weeks ago. I did Preston against Brighton for Sky in the EFL Cup.
Yeah.
And Brighton made 10 changes. Preston made a few changes. And it got to about, I think Brighton scored, and it got to like 15 minutes into the second half. And I turned to the cameraman and I said, Preston can't win this. They need the crowd here. They needed something. They just needed a little something, a little spark, a little, come on, we're here. You can still do this. And it's the first time having gone to games, I was like, need the fans in. Need the fans in. And you could have had, okay, and I've used Preston as the example. I'm going to say 18,000, 20,000 in the game. Say you're allowed 15% of that, what's that, 2,500, 3,000 people, in a stadium that size wouldn't be a problem. And I don't understand why you can't do that. And I'm not saying you would need to tell everybody. In fact, I was thinking as well, if you're a season ticket holder at a football club and your club was allowed to have 10%, 50% of capacity, and they've got a database of everybody's mobile number, where you live, where you stay, whatever seat you sat on, and I bet you said to them, look, you need to pay 12 quid for your ticket. I bet you they would all pay it to go and watch it on a Saturday, as well as already paid their season ticket.
Well, look, here's his argument. So Oliver Dowden is Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, right? And he's saying that it's, and he says, oh, it's so hateful for me to have to do this and so on, but to allow people to go to the Albert Hall and people to go to London Palladium to, great. Look, I'm all for keeping the theatre businesses going. And I understand how much those guys are scrimping and scraping to keep alive far more than Premier League clubs are, because they'll be fine. They'll be fine, won't they, Premier League clubs?
Yeah.
However, his argument is the culture of it. And I think it's a very, very dangerous and unfair argument to suddenly say that because it's about, you still have to travel to the games. And essentially he's saying, without saying it, that there's a culture in football where people are going to gather in pubs and so on. Well, people are going to
hang on,
just watch a musical.
Well, hang on a minute. Well, just make it home fans then.
Yeah.
Home fans, no away fans, home fans. And by the way, you're right about Oliver Dowden. But when he said that, I immediately felt, so everybody that goes to football is a thug. They'll not do the right thing. They'll get drunk and they'll cause a riot, even though there's only 2,000 at the game, which I think is really unfair. Yeah. But what an opportunity for football fans to prove the government and everybody wrong that we can go to the game, behave properly, and leave. Now, the problem I've got with that, unfortunately, is I saw something the other night there about all the kids coming out of the pub in Liverpool, all jumping and cheering.
Yeah.
Really irresponsible. But what an opportunity for football fans to not do that and prove to Mr. Dowden, if he just gives them the opportunity to act properly. No away fans are travelling anywhere, just home fans, and let's see how it works.
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, if you need, and I would say as well, there's every time I go to a stadium, I've got a compliance form to fill in. I get the test, I get my temperature taken, etc., etc., etc. Well, you could do that with all those people that are coming, but for the government not to allow it to happen, to let them try and earn some revenue. And even if you said, there's a bit of paper here, you have to sign this to say, yes, on my volition, I'm wanting to go to the game and I've taken all the precautions I can.
Yeah.
How can you not do that?
And I think
did they do that with the Albert Hall? Did they do that with the theatres? And like you said, sorry to go on, we're not saying that nobody should not go to the theatre. We're saying no problem. But an outdoor stadium, how in God's earth can he say that that's not the same?
It scientifically doesn't make any sense, does it? And that's the problem. And I think you're right. He's stereotyping Oliver Dowden. And this isn't even having a pop at him. He's obviously got his bosses and things are being fed down to him and science is being fed down to him. I get that. But he's stereotyping a football fan. What about the people? What about those football fans who take their kids? What about the single parents who will take their two sons to watch, Accrington play on a Saturday afternoon? That's the only time they get with them. Now, what about those fans who treat football as a family event? And not, stereotyping it as the 1980s and everyone's going to start misbehaving and throwing glasses all over each other, Anyway.
Well, the other thing with that as well, I'd like to think that we've got to a situation in this country with obviously this situation we are in, is that just maybe, if you had the opportunity to go to the football match and some lunatic was out of order, whether there was 3 or 4 of them, somebody would try and police each other, would police each other. Because if you're going to look out for anybody at any time, now's the time to do it, everybody. And I'm not giving it, woe is me and it's woe the country and blah, blah, blah. I'm saying, if you get the opportunity to go to a football match and you're not behaving properly, I want to think that somebody will go, oi, turn it in a bit.
Yeah.
If you do something stupid, this all finishes. Now, I don't know whether that's pie in the sky and it's a naivety that I have, and I want everything to be so good and we can show as football fans we can do the right thing. But I'd like to think that we can police ourselves, and maybe that's what we need the opportunity to do. Can we do it? It's entirely up to you guys.
Yeah, spot on. Right. Al, 2 more things I want to talk to you about this week. And I know you want to talk about this guy as well. I'm so excited for Arsenal fans, of which I'm not one of them.
Partey.
For Thomas Partey, right? Thomas Partey looks the business. I'm not going to lie and say I've watched 30 Atletico Madrid games last season, but I've seen enough of him. And I mean, like, I know it's dangerous to watch YouTube clips and so on, but I watched one the other day and it was about half an hour long. And I thought, when does this end? How many examples of it are there of him doing this magical stuff? He, for me, looks like he's got the size and the power of a Vieira, the feet of a Messi almost. You know, some of the situations he got himself out of. He drives the ball forward. He looks exactly what the type of player that Arsenal need. You know, you talk about Fernandinho, and Mikel would have seen Fernandinho very closely. He looks like he's got that ability to be able to get back, and they call him the octopus. You know, he's got an octopus tattoo on his arm because the Atletico Madrid fans call him the octopus because he just goes and steals the ball back. Tentacles. I mean, what a player he could be. And for 45 mil, Al, at 27 years old, he looks like an absolute snatch, doesn't he?
I've had him on the one to watch. I flagged him up about 2 weeks ago, and I have seen quite a lot of them. And I don't know about you, Will, but some things trigger. You know, you're like, oh yeah. And I was thinking, I wonder if Pep had thought about him, and I wonder if they'd thought about him while Mikel was actually at Manchester City. And until Mikel got in and got the reins to spend a few quid, he's gone right away and give it. I want Partey. I want Daniel Partey. Get him for me. And he looks as if. Listen, he's coming to a new country. It's a new football team. There'll be a lot expected of him because he is a very good football player. He's an international football player. And he might be the difference that... And I remember talking about Arsenal ages ago and somebody was talking about, you know, Guendouzi and etc. And I'm like, I'm nowhere near good enough for Arsenal to be at that level. And all of a sudden, they've all gone on loan somewhere else. But this boy ain't going on loan after the year. This boy's going to be different class. I've spoken about him before. I'm glad you flagged them up because it's nice for me to talk about somebody that I think that we talk about who's the signing of the window going to be, or who's made one of the best signings. And although I've said the likes of, you know, Ollie Watkins, I think will do really well at Arsenal, and Timo Werner, I think, is a really good player, and I don't think you've seen the best of him yet. This lad could be the signing, genuinely. And Cavani going to Manchester United is something different, etc., etc. This boy is different class, and I think might be the difference from Arsenal thinking they can finish in the top four to actually finishing in the top four.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I mentioned Patrick Vieira because I think that Thomas Partey is, you know, obviously very similar when you look at them in stature and so on, and when you see them play, those kind of long, powerful legs driving forward, which we all remember at Highbury from Patrick Vieira. But think about Arsenal's midfielders out, you know, since Vieira's days. They've all become these sort of dainty little guys who can, you know, they've got the tricks, they've got the flicks and so on. And even, you know, even Jack Wilshere that you can throw in there. But, you know, Thomas Rosicky, a very different type of midfielders.
Yeah.
But they haven't really, and I know, you know, they thought they had that player in Granit Xhaka who's obviously come on over the last 18 months or so, but they haven't had that sort of stature and that power that Wenger used to have in midfield. And it looks like they're going back to those days. And I think you might be spot on in that sense that, you know, Pep and Mikel probably had a long conversation about that.
No question.
And then Pep thought, I've spent 60-odd million quid on Rodri. We've still got Fernandinho for another season. How am I going to get this guy in to play when he has to play?
Diaz was coming in as well, wasn't he? Diaz was coming in. Was another one.
In that position, in that defensive midfielder role, you know, and at 27, you're getting him in at his best time, aren't you? His prime.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Listen, hindsight will know. It'll be nice to look in the future, but of all the signings, I think it's been great business by Arsenal, especially by Mikel Arteta, who probably played a big part in him coming, actually. Don't worry about that. Yeah. But then again, Daniel Partey leaving someone like Atletico Madrid, still a big move for him because they have an outstanding manager, an outstanding football team, a level in the Champions League that a lot of clubs went to go to, and yet he comes to Arsenal. So he's obviously sold the big picture about coming to Arsenal and what they want, and he's obviously bought it because he's an Arsenal player now. And it's exciting times for Arsenal, genuinely. It'll be interesting to see how well he does, how well he fits into the Premier League really quickly. And if we see any of the traits about the Vieira, which is giving somebody a bit of that every now and again, as well as being as good as a football player he is. It's not just about... I think, you know, he's coming into Arsenal as an international football player, but regarded as probably already one of the better Arsenal football players that are in the team, and a lot of players will look up to him, and he's going to have to carry that.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I don't know who Daniel Partey is, but if that's Thomas's brother, I'll sign him as well.
Sorry. I've called him Daniel. What an idiot.
If we can have two of them, I'll tell you what, let's get two of them in there.
Yeah, I think there is a Daniel Partey, but he just doesn't play football. Yeah, I don't know. I apologise, Mr. and Mrs. Partey.
Right, another signing I want to talk about, because I spent a lot of time with Darren Moore this week, and obviously former West Brom manager, currently at Doncaster now. And he was talking about his old club signing, Callum Grant, in West Brom, of course. They put, it seems to me, out all their eggs in the Diangana and Pereira basket, and they look two great players. Pereira's the absolute assist machine, Diangana, exciting young prospect and whatever. But when you look at a player that they need, and I know they've signed Callum Robinson, who you've seen a lot of, is Callum Robinson going to score you 10, 15 goals enough to keep you in the Prem? Because they need goals. They need an Earnshaw, don't they? They need someone, who's going to bag you those goals for the baggies. Is Callum Grant that guy? I've seen a lot of him at Huddersfield. I remember him at Charlton. They're getting a 23-year-old. They're not spending as much. But I was thinking, should they be going down the route of Josh King? All right, it's going to cost you the same as Callum Wilson. It's going to cost you at least 20 million quid. He's 28 years old, but he's experienced. He's an international. He's been there in the Premier League. And that is important, isn't it? A Premier League proven player to score you the goals. Bilic is going for the risk. He's rolling the dice and going with Grant. But is that the right option?
Wow. Well, I'm going to say no. Because A, I'm a big fan of Josh King. B, you've already spoken about Callum, and they're hoping that he's going to get the goals. Listen, Callum Grant's done okay. He's played at Huddersfield, not at the top level. And I think the experience, the likes of Josh King, let's just say, someone who's got that kind of experience. And West Brom couldn't have just been looking at Huddersfield. But if that's where they're shopping, then, Slavan's opportunities to bring in who he actually wants to bring in first and foremost, the door might have been shut on him, and he's been told, look, here's Grant, here's B, here's C, here's D, here's E, pick one. We don't know the ins and outs of it. But I think if Slaven Bilic had an opportunity to bring someone with more experience and a real good goal-scoring record, he obviously would have done that. That's not the case. So, West Brom fans can only hold their fingers crossed and hope that Callum Grant hits the ground running and somehow scores enough goals to keep them in the Premiership. I think it's going to be very difficult. But when they made the signing, I was like, he's good. He's all right. Hopefully Slavan will make him into a better player, maybe a better goal scorer or a better team player for West Brom. But I certainly didn't get overly excited by it. And I still think they're going to be, staring down the barrel, West Brom, when we get to the end of next year.
Right, Al, let's speak to Darren Hughes from Betfair, because good to have you on, Darren. Alan thinks Scotland are going to win absolutely everything after this 8-game unbeaten run. Best run in, 32 years since he was playing. There it is, the hat's on. That means business.
Easy.
Right, here we go. I'm going to kick it off with a nice little nasty one for you Scotland fans. What are the odds for Scotland not to make the Euros next year, Darren?
Well, currently, Serbia are a 1-4 shot to qualify, which means Scotland are 1-4 not to qualify for Euro 2020, unfortunately. Scotland themselves are 14-5 to qualify from the game, so they look slightly up against it unless they can somehow manage to clone another 11 Alan McAnally's in time for that game. I'd say they're probably in a bit of trouble.
Alan, are you backing them to qualify?
Listen, there's nothing wrong with the way we've played. We're on a good run. And the best thing I heard was Stevie Clark talking about A, the way we're playing, and B, not to get too carried away. And obviously, it's going to be a very difficult game in November against Serbia. At 14-5, to be quite honest with you, Darren, I think there's a lot of pressure on Serbia because everybody thinks they're going to beat us. But what we've done so far against Slovakia and against Czechoslovakia the other night there, listen, I was quite happy with the way they played. We don't score a lot of goals, but we're definitely hard to beat, and that's how we'll have to be. And with Lady Luck on our side, you just never know. We're massive, 200, 251 to win the thing. But I would have to, just because I'm a very, patriotic Scotsman, I'll take the 14-5 and hope we have the night of all nights.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you're very similar to ourselves in the sense that even qualification for tournaments like these, as an Irishman, we don't go over there expecting necessarily to win it. Yeah, so with the pressure, it's necessarily on us as much, but it's just great to get there for that team of young lads,
Even the position sorry, well, I just want one more thing, just because we're on Scotland specifically. And I know, Serbia 1-4 with Betfair are pretty short, but even though the game was dire against Israel and it went to extra time, and then we won in penalties. listen, you take it all day long. I mean, it'd be great if you win 3 and 4 nothing. But if we do the same against Serbia, trust me, everybody in Scotland will be absolutely delighted, and Stevie Clark will deserve a big pat on the back.
Yeah, like Darren, England fans obviously want to know what the price is for them winning the tournament next summer, if it is to go ahead. And then go on to throw in the Scotland ones for a laugh as well.
Sure thing, yeah. Well, on Betfair Exchange at the moment, England are currently 6.6 joint favourites with Belgium, but that's about 11-2 in fractional odds. So they're joint favourites. You'd probably wonder, did they really justify being that short? I mean, look, obviously they beat Belgium the other night, and Belgium are a fantastic side, but they just always seem to struggle when they get that far, you know, to the big tournament on the big stage. There's a couple of tournaments I can remember from my lifetime where you kind of expected England to go on and kick on. They just didn't quite do it. Things didn't quite go their way. Scotland, then, on the other hand, are freely available to back at 299-1. So for any optimistic Patriots out there like Alan, you can fill your boots on that.
Then just finally, Darren, on that, let's have some odds on England players to make the squad. I know there's a lot of attention on Harry Maguire at the moment. Have you got a price for Maguire, incidentally, to not make it? I know he's one of Southgate's boys, but what is he to go with the England squad, Maguire?
Yeah, look, I mean, things haven't gone exactly great for Harry lately, but he's still fully expected to join up with the squad. He's a 1-8 shot to head over to the Euros next year. Very hard to foresee a situation where Southgate has 5 or 6 defenders ahead of him in the pecking order, barring injury, of course, which can happen to anybody at any time. But I'd say he's pretty much a lock to go over unless disaster happens for him.
Al, I know you were surprised, weren't you, that there was no Grealish playing last night. What are his odds to go?
Sorry, but yeah, Darren, what is his odds? I'll tell you something. I'm going to throw 3 pairs. Greenwood for me, England international in the future. I think he might be there. I think Connor Cody's done brilliant, and if he keeps doing well at Wolves, and Grealish for me would be my hat trick.
Yeah, well, those down.
Grealish is currently a 1-3 shot to be on the plane. I mean, look, again, yeah, it's hard to foresee a situation where he's left at home. I think I read somewhere the other day he's created more chances than any other player in the Premier League this season so far. He looks a phenomenal talent. Pity he's not wearing a green jersey instead of a white one, but we won't mention the war.
And Scotland.
And Scotland, exactly. Yeah, listen, but he's a phenomenal footballer. He really is. Look, a bit, sorry for him to be dropped the other night, but these things happen. I mean, he's still very young. And look, give him another couple of years and he'll be one of those players that isn't even considered to be dropped. He'll be a permanent fixture in that team. Mason Greenwood then for United, phenomenal talent. Like it's hard to believe he's the age he is. He's currently even money to be on the plane, which would look a lick of value to me, to be honest.
Unbelievable.
He reminds you of Theo Walcott. Theo Walcott was brought to a World Cup in 2006, I think, in Germany, having never played a game for England, whereas Greenwood actually has money in the bank at this stage. He's been performing for Manchester United. He's played well for England. Obviously had that little issue there, kind of the social aspect, which, we kind of have to look over. But for me, phenomenal footballer, and it'd be an awful shame to leave him at home for his first tournament, even though he is so young.
And just 2 final ones, Darren. 2 outsiders. Jamie Vardy, price on him to go with England, and Jude Bellingham, Borussia Dortmund's new signing.
Sure thing, yeah. Look, Vardy, he's the Benjamin Button of England football, really, isn't he? He seems to be getting younger. It's hard to believe he's still as quick as he ever was and still as sharp as he ever was, and quicker and sharper even, depending how you look at it. He's a 12-1 poke. He's a bit of an outsider, obviously having announced his retirement to be on the plane next summer. But again, if he continues in the vein of form that he's in, it's very hard to see Southgate not asking him at least to join up with the squad, because he's a danger against any team. He's just so hard to predict, And then for Jude Bellingham, he's a 4-1 poke to make the squad, which is, again, he's a good footballer. I just find sometimes it can be hard for the English lads who are playing abroad. They're not playing in the Premier League because there's not too many of them. There's not too many English lads who don't play in the Premier League. Jadon Sancho is obviously one example, but I think it's often hard for guys who aren't front and centre, on Sky Sports every weekend to make that to make the England squad. I'm not entirely sure why that is.
Okay, look. We continue to be useless with the Accas, and we're going to have another pop, and we're going to slide through the leagues rather than just doing an all Premier League one this week. We're going to make it interesting. We'll have one from the Prem, a couple from the Championship, a couple from League One maybe as well. Al, what do you fancy in the Premier League? 3:00 kickoff on Saturday.
We've got 1 or 2 games.
One to choose from.
Game. Well, at Chelsea Southampton, as much as I think the Saints have done well, the manager has come through the storm. He's changed the fortunes. Danny Ings is fabulous. You can't not bet Chelsea. Chelsea will be short. I'm sure Darren's going to tell us. But from the Prem games at the weekend, certainly the Saturday 3 o'clock, I'm just going to go with Chelsea. I expect them to win. I don't know, even as a score, I know we're not going to do score, but I expect them to score a couple of goals and keep Southampton out. So I'll throw in Chelsea from the Prem.
Darren, I wouldn't touch that with Alan's barge pole, but he's going to go for it. He's got the superior knowledge. I don't know. I think Mr. Ings has got something to say about that one. But go on, what's a Chelsea home win on Saturday?
I'd be inclined to agree with yourself, Will, that they've been very disappointing for me this season. I really thought they'd kick on and break the City-Liverpool stranglehold, but they just haven't done it. Their new signings don't seem to have gelled together yet. They're about a 1-2 shot against Southampton this weekend, so they are quite short, but they're not too bad to throw in an acca for a bit of a price builder. So yeah, we can start off with them.
Great price, by the way, 1-2.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Great.
All right. So
working man's price.
And then I'll throw in a championship. I'm going to throw in top of the table, Bristol City going well, aren't they, under Dean Holden? I'm going to go for them to beat Barnsley. Barnsley have lost their manager. Gerard Strewbury's off to the New York Red Bulls, isn't he? So Darren Moore, incidentally, was the favourite to get that job. Darren Moore, of course, former West Brom manager, is currently at Doncaster. Anyway, what's that? So Bristol City to beat Barnsley in the champ.
I'm not sure what to say. Darren Hughes is favourite for that job. This one says news to me. Bristol City obviously currently flying high at the top of the championship, unbeaten in 4 games. They're a 13-8 shot to beat Barnsley at the weekend, which would look a touch of value given how well Bristol have been playing this year in the championship. So they're a great side to have in your act, I'd say. 13-8.
Yeah. So 2 more. I'll throw
Darren,
another one in the champ.
By the way, you couldn't afford to take the Bristol City job. You need to stay with us anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they can't afford my wages. Definitely not. No, I'm not sure Betfair can either. But
right, I'm gonna throw in number 3 for our acca. I'm gonna throw in Swansea to beat Huddersfield. Huddersfield look like, well, they're going to lose Callum Grant, aren't they, to West Brom?
West Brom.
Who's their main man, came from Charlton, didn't he, when they were in the Premier League, I think, just before they went down. Unbeaten in the league as well. So I'm going to throw in Swansea to beat Huddersfield in the Championship. What's that one saying?
Yeah, look, another team, they were kind of Premier League pedigree, like, as in they're just that step ahead of a step ahead of Huddersfield, I should say, as you say, unbeaten in the Championship so far. Swansea are 9-10, just a shade under evens to beat Huddersfield this weekend. So again, fairly solid side to have in an acca.
Oh, big prices today. Big prices, by the way.
Yes.
This will be some acca.
Yeah, you're looking good so far, lads.
You can finish it off, Al. What are you having?
Yeah, I can kill it right here, right now. I'm going to go Ipswich to beat Accrington. My pal Paul Lambert's done a good job there. I went to Milton Keynes. They played with 10 men and got a point out of the game. He was delighted. And then I think last week they won 3-0, 4-0, I think it was. So they bounced back big time. I think at home they'll have too much. Create a lot of chances. I'm going to go Ipswich to beat Accrington, although I'm presuming they're probably a little shorter than the others does.
Yeah, it's a touch shorter, but not by much. It's just a fairly solid 7-10 shot to beat Accrington, so they're not too bad. You still get your bit of value. Look, obviously playing very well in League One so far, unbeaten, 1-4, drawn 1, top of the table, flying high, and they probably should get another result this weekend. So I'd say this is looking to be a very solid acca, lads.
Lovely jubbly. What's it saying in the magic calculator?
The magic calculator puts this out at 12.47, which is 11.5 to 1. But of course, as always, we are happy to boost that for our good friends.
You're only happy to boost it for us every week because we keep losing it.
Look, some week you only have to be right once, lads. These things, you know, that's the way it works.
Well, the only way we can get it boosted to even more and actually win is to make Darren pick one of the teams.
Jesus. God knows. My own football punting is hardly something to be admired, so I leave it to the experts, lads. Happy to leave you two at it.
Well, we'll make you do that next time. Darren, thanks very much, mate.
Cheers, lads. Thanks very much. Best of luck at the weekend, and of course, we'll get that boosted for you. Thanks, lads.
Cheers. Right, don't forget, guys, you can, of course, back our accas if you're stupid enough to do that on the betting hub. Go and check that out for more details. Al, before we go, 3 very quick questions for you. Who's going to win the Merseyside derby?
Honours even, draw. Sorry about that.
Oh, draw at Goodison, okay. Are Everton going to win the league? Because there's more and more Everton fans coming out the woodwork.
No.
4 from 4. No, what about if they beat Liverpool? You'll be talking about it next week, won't you? If they beat Liverpool, they'll be league contenders.
I need to give him a mention. He's a legend at Everton, a pal of mine, Graham Sharp, another Scotsman. I play golf with him all the time.
Yeah.
And he tells me everything that goes on at Everton. Sorry to let the cat out of the bag. But he's giddy. He's a bit chirpier. He's a bit like, I'm going to play golf with him. He's like, look at that. That's another like Calvert-Lewin goal, and I'm like, I've never seen you like this, Sharpie. Anyway, he's convinced, I'm not.
Yeah. City Arsenal, and the more that these games go on, because it was kind of we still call it master against apprentice and whatever. Those guys have spent so much time together and so much respect for each other. But look what happened, and this is from a City fan. Look what happened at Wembley, right, in the FA Cup. City were. It was almost like Mikel had just got Pep's little playbooks and just been looking through them, whatever, and and that was the most recent one, wasn't it? But obviously at the Etihad, City defensively fixed things. Do you think Arsenal could go there, cause a shock?
No, I'm going to go City for the simple reason it is at the Etihad, and I think that it is time for Mr. Guardiola to prove to everybody just how good a tactician he is. He knows exactly how Arsenal are going to play, regardless of what Mikel knows about Pep. I expect City to win.
Yeah, and last one, bearing in mind Manchester United's last turnout in the Premier League was a 6-1 drubbing against Tottenham at Old Trafford. Brucey against his old team, is he going to put the nail even further in the Solskjaer coffin?
Maybe. The game's up at Newcastle, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, having said that, there's no fans there and all that. I know that. But, I mean, that will help Newcastle a little bit. Put it this way. There is a lot more pressure on Manchester United. I've had a real good time the last 6 weeks. Well, Yorkie, Dwight's been over from, he's been over living here for a bit.
Another golfing partner.
Another golfing partner. And as much as he's still a huge Man United fan, Dwight, he's like, there's something not right, big man. There's just something's a bit weird and it doesn't seem right. And if it's still the same, then Brucey won't have a better chance to turn over Man United. I'd probably be happy to think, and the boy Maxime signed another contract, doesn't he? I think he signed a 5 or 6 and they've given him a little bit. So that's a huge boost in the arm for everybody at Newcastle. I'm going to sit in the fence again a little bit and say that, with the stuff that's going on at Manchester United, I'm going to go to Newcastle, frustrate the life out of them and get a draw.
Yeah, and the last question, who wins out of a 3-ball? McInally, York or Sharp?
Oh, it's not even up for debate.
Honestly, you schooled them. There it is.
I think you'll find that I still have to give both of them shots. That's all you need to know.
Al, good to see you, mate. Let's hope Scotland continue this form and convince everyone they're going to win the World Cup. Could be 9 from 9. When's the Serbia game?
Well, it's over there, so probably not.
No, when is it? It's coming up, isn't it?
It's the 12th of November, if I'm right. 10th or 12th of November. So what we got? 1 month to go. And then we'll see exactly how we can go.
Yeah, it's a big one. Good to see you, mate. Right, that is the group chat with me, Will Perry, Mr. Alan McInally. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.